talking Illinois high school football.
If your goals are as high as you talk about, tonight's the night you go out and just take one more step.
It's a view from the West.
And it starts right now!
Welcome back to View from the West podcast, the podcast covering Illinois high school football on the western side of the state of Illinois. I'm your host, Greg Armstrong, joined by Ty Taylor, our View from the West conference insider for the Three Rivers Athletic Conference. Mitch is hoping to join us maybe at the midway point, but for right now, Ty, I got no worries. I know you can cover all the ground here.
I appreciate it, man. And I'm upset with Mitch because this is the second straight year he's missed the Three Rivers preview. He's all upset because Morrison left and he hates the conference now. So I don't know, man. It's unbelievable. How's it going, man? I feel like I haven't seen you in a while.
That's true. Yeah, we've gone a little while without, being face-to-face here on camera. But, no, it's good to be back, and it's good to be talking some high school football. And, man, I totally forgot. Mitch bounced out on this episode last year.
Unbelievable. I remember I said last year on the top, I'm like, it's like real life because he's out. He's a Morrison grad. I'm a Mercer County grad. I'm in replacing him. So here we are again, man. Was he on the NUIC preview? He was. It was just him and Kyle, right?
Yeah, he did the NUIC preview because I ended up being stuck at state baseball tournaments all weekend, so I couldn't be there. So this may be my episode with you, and he had the episode for the NUIC. So anyway, here we go, covering all things Three Rivers Athletic Conference. Of course, today's episode brought to you by our friends at Breedlove Sporting Goods, Western Illinois' premier sporting goods store for uniforms, apparel, equipment, awards, and online team stores. They provide all the same sporting goods services as the big nationwide companies, but with a faster turnaround and a uniform pricing, a fraction of what you're probably used to. They offer name brands such as Adidas, Under Armour, and Nike, and are extremely responsive with any inquiries. With a primary focus on the western side of the state of Illinois, Breedlove Sporting Goods is the fastest way to outfit your team. Check them out on Facebook or at breedlovesports.com, or you can shoot Cal Breedlove an email, calbreedlove@gmail.com for more information. So like we said, we got Ty Taylor on to talk Three Rivers Athletic Conference. We've already previewed the Northwest Upstate Illini and 8-man football, along with the Lincoln Land Conference. Those two episodes are out in the archives. Go check them out if you haven't listened to them already. August 12th, next week, we'll be talking Big Northern Conference. So our first venture into the Big Northern, talking all of the great football that comes out of that conference. Really excited to get into that. August 19th, we'll be talking Western Big Six. We'll bring in our conference insider for the Big Six, Denny Derricks, former Geneseo head coach, over 50 years coaching experience, now an announcer for the Maple Leafs broadcasts. He's willing to lend his expertise and his insights to the Western Big Six. We're really excited about that. And of course, we got to plug the big show. Join us for the inaugural View from the West kickoff party on Sunday, August 17th at 5 p.m. at the Other Bar in downtown Moline. Coaches, student athletes, parents, fans, all invited to join us for a live podcast event to celebrate the 2025 season. We'll have local coaches, area experts live to preview the upcoming season. We'll be working with Breedloves for giveaways, raffles, the merch that will be available. It's going to be a ton of fun. So save the date, Sunday, August 17th, 5 p.m., the Other Bar in downtown Moline. Ty, we just discussed it briefly before we hopped on here. Maybe some slow pitch softball commitments, but you're hoping to be there.
I'm hoping to be there, man. But my brothers and sisters on the Viola Tropics, they might need me in attendance depending on the dates of the tournament. So we'll see. But I'm hoping to be there if I can be, or if we get bounced early, I will show up. I'll be there if I can be, man. Looking forward to it. But if I'm not there, people should show up and come and support you guys and just get ready. It's going to be a fun high school football season this time of the year. Is always so exciting, I think, early August as we get ready to kick off the season here in about, 4 weeks now? So
yeah.
3 or 4, I guess. I don't know. So exciting, and I'm sure that'll kind of get the excitement going too with people coming out and getting together on Sunday, August the 17th.
That's right. We do have several coaches and other people confirmed that are going to be there. I do want to say I've reached out to a lot of coaches that I have, contact info for. If you haven't heard from me, please know that you are invited. If I didn't get a hold of you directly, please know any coaches, any athletic directors, fans, or parents, people are invited to be down there and just be part of the fun. It's going to be a really good time. So, the other bar, downtown Moline, I got to give a shout out to Amir. That's his place. He's letting us, set up shop. It's a great location. It's going to be a perfect setup, so we can't wait for that. And if you're in a championship game, I want to get the play-by-play. I want to get the rundown of how it all goes. So
we're trying to win our third straight league title. So I don't know. It's a lot of pressure filled. We're going to be missing some key pieces though that are gone on a bachelor trip and some other stuff. So we're trying to piecemeal together a roster to make a run at it. That's enough about that though. People want to hear about high school football.
The Viola Tropics about to start a dynasty. That's going to be our next podcast. So,
right, yeah.
Well, of course, we want to say thank you to everyone who follows along. Make sure you can follow us on X, on Instagram if you're not already, and subscribe to us on YouTube. Really trying to make a push to get people out. Check out our YouTube channel. See what we got there. Full-length episodes available there, individual team previews. We have game highlights from previous years and so much more. So again, like and subscribe, as they say on YouTube. Help spread the word. If you get this episode and you like it, send out a link, share it on social media, let people know you're listening and you enjoy it. If you're interested in being a sponsor, you can reach out to us, let us know. Email us at viewfromwestpod@gmail.com. We still have some space to advertise your local business, support local high school football. We'll promote your business. It's a great partnership. And if you don't have a business, you still want to support what we're doing here, it's head over directly to PayPal, search for View from the West, paypal.me/viewfromwestpod. That's the easiest way to support us and show us that you like what we're doing here. So, all right, Ty, I went into autopilot there.
Fair enough. Mitch is better looking than me, so I'll take it.
Well, with all the talking aside, let's get into it. We'll start in the TRAC Mississippi side of things. Kewanee, the Boilermakers, head coach Matt Taylor led them to a 5-5 record a year ago, lost in the first round of the playoffs on the road to Olney. They returned 5 on offense, 5 on defense. We'll start on the offensive side of the ball. I'm really excited to see what sophomore Ace LaFollette can do in his sophomore season. I saw them play against Sherrard at the end of last year, and it was one of those plays that was kind of nondescript. It was just a run to the outside and probably gained 15 yards or so. Nothing super flashy, but you just saw like a glimpse of whoa, he just got to the edge and beat some guys around the corner and eventually got chased out of bounds. But you just saw that little flash of this kid could be really good. He was second team all conference, 545 yards, 7 touchdowns, also had another 200 yards and 3 touchdowns through the air receiving. So Coach described him as exceptional. So he's not as big maybe as Alex Duarte was a year ago. They're great running back and linebacker, but they say he's faster with better hands. So that's a piece that I'm really excited about for this Kewanee team.
Yeah, I think that's kind of where it starts for them in terms of returners. They, especially on the offensive end, they had a lot of, impact guys graduate. You mentioned Alex Duarte. He ended up being their career touchdown leader at Kewanee, which is a program that goes back. I mean, Kewanee High School has been around for a really, really long time. So that's a really impressive, record for him to be able to break during his career. So you have to replace him. He was also their leading tackler last year on the defensive end too. So that's a big piece. Their quarterback graduated. I think Colson Welgott was his name. And then their number 1 receiver graduated last year too. So there's a lot of pieces, especially on the skill side of things for Kewanee that need to be replaced. But like you said, LaFollette is a freshman last year and really kind of limited time behind a runner like Duarte. Really impressed. I think 10 total touchdowns on the year for him. So, I mean, to me, that's probably what the offense is going to go through for them here in 2025. But a program that's been to the playoffs, I think 2 years in a row now in Class 4A. I think, they'll be kind of on that 3A, 4A line this year. So, they're always an interesting team to follow in the TRAC, especially just because their enrollment a little bit higher than most of the other schools they play. And they always feel like they have a lot of, athleticism, I think, at Kewanee.
Yeah, so Coach mentioned a quarterback battle in the summer. So I always think that's an interesting, it's an interesting way to play out your summer because I think ultimately that makes the team better. If there's two people competing for whether it's quarterback or multiple positions, I think you're already kind of starting that competitive juices, flowing in the summer. So we'll see where they end up in the quarterback spot. They do return all-conference honorable mention Cannon Griffin as a junior tackle. On the defensive side of the ball, Arias Simmons on the defensive line was an all-conference honorable mention as well. So this is a team that I think, like you said, it's been in the mix, and I think once again they have some players here that should keep them in the mix when you start looking at how the conference shakes out.
Yeah, I agree. And really a team that's really, really young. So when you have teams like that, to me at least, it's kind of fun and interesting to follow the progression from week 1 to week 9, because this is a team that I think, they have kind of a challenging schedule off the top, to see where they are week 9 as opposed to week 1, because they have potential, I think, to get better and better as the season progresses.
Yeah. Well, speaking of week 1, they open up on the road at Erie Prophetstown. If you remember last year, I don't know that we really had, really high expectation. We didn't know what to expect out of Erie Prophetstown, and we kind of thought Kewanee was going to be pretty good, and Erie Prophetstown got that win in week 1. So I think that's an interesting, maybe Kewanee looking for a little revenge in week 1 after what happened a year ago. We'll talk about Erie Prophetstown down the way, but that's their starting point. Coach describes the team as gritty, as disciplined, but as you said, young, but athletic. So they're kind of reloading, looking for that success. He talked about, this is funny, he talked about their offensive line has become extremely committed this summer, and their tagline is shared misery is what's bringing them together. So, so guess whatever you got to do to, keep yourself motivated and looking forward to the season. Shared misery.
Don't invite me to the offensive line room. I want to be happy.
Yeah, there you go. All right. Sounds good. Oh, we got to mention, Kewanee kind of threw down the gauntlet here. Head coach Matt Taylor kind of threw down the gauntlet and said, in their fun little tidbit, what do we need to know about this program? Maybe off the field type stuff. He said, hands down, best game day popcorn, pork chops, and patties. So, that's running the gamut. The best at every one of them. That's high praise. I've had a Kewanee pork chop plenty of times. They are really darn good. I will say that.
Now, I think, and this is a little off the beaten path, but a few years ago, the IHSA did like a statewide competition, I think, in conjunction with the Illinois Farm Bureau for like the best pork chop that high schools had at football games throughout the state. And I'm pretty sure Hall either won or got really, really far in it. So that's maybe Kewanee and Hall. You always talk about wanting trophy games. They should play for like a pork chop trophy.
That's amazing idea. Athletic directors, if you're listening, here we go. We're putting out all kinds of good ideas here. So I do remember that. Kewanee did well. They did well in that. I don't remember if they won it, but yes, they held their own, and Spring Valley Hall also did well in that. So anyway, so there you go. There's a look at Kewanee. They open, like we said, on the road at Erie Prophetstown. Let's look at the Mendota Trojans. New head coach Jim Eustace in his 16th season coaching high school football, but his first here at Mendota. Last year, tough stretch for the Trojans, 0-9, 0-5 in the TRAC, Mississippi. As far as who they return, the big piece you look at is Aiden Tillman. He was a junior last year, threw for 854 yards, 9 touchdowns. He also ran for 258. So, when you look back at some of the Jim Eustace-led teams from Marquette and from St. Bede, he likes to spread it out a little bit. He really relies on an athletic quarterback. So I think that you can see, depending on, I don't know what, offense they're going to run there, but based on track record, I think Aiden Tillman is going to be a big piece for a Eustace-led offense.
I was really impressed with the hire of Coach Eustace at Mendota because he's, as you just ran through, really an established coach, been around for a long time at 2 separate programs as the head coach. And then, you look at Mendota and they've really struggled win-loss wise over the past 10 or 15 years. They got to the playoffs, I think the first year they were in the TRAC, but you mentioned last year 0-9, I think a couple of years before that 1-8 apiece. So I've always said, I've been to Mendota a couple of times. I don't know if you've ever made the trip all the way. I can't stress that from where I am over there. but that is a beautiful campus, a beautiful like high school football facility for the size of school that Mendota is. So there are pieces there for them to be successful, I think. Obviously, like I just touched on the field results haven't really been there yet. But a really good head coaching hire. And to me, if I'm, with them, that's what I'm excited about, is kind of getting a fresh start with new head coach Jim Eustace and seeing what type of momentum, they can get rolling as they start the 2025 season and kind of a new era for the program.
Yeah, I think to your point that it's an interesting hire and it's a good hire in that Eustace has coached a long time for two smaller schools. So I think now when you jump into Mendota, and it's just more enrollment. So now they haven't had the success. They haven't had a track record of success. So I don't know that they got at this current state a whole lot of buy-in and excitement around kids joining the football program. But I think he has an opportunity here to, get a little buzz around school. And if they can do something, that's, with more pieces, what can Eustace do at a bigger school with, more bodies available? I think that's interesting, to kind of look at. They have a couple players that they bring back on the defensive side of the ball, both all conference selections from a year ago, defensive end, senior linebacker, Wyatt Osman. And you also have junior defensive back Cam Wasmer, who was an honorable mention all conference. So two pieces there. They will need, getting back to the offensive side of the ball, they'll need to replace Braden Freeman, who is a wide receiver. But like I said, you think if you have Aiden Tillman, if he could the offense kind of runs through him, if you can work around that and find some other role players, maybe there's something there at Mendota. Mendota will open up on the road at Riverdale. So I think, they lost that one last year. Riverdale got the win. And that was a matchup that we were kind of looking at a year ago saying one of these teams is going to build a lot of momentum early in the season. And it was Riverdale that grabbed it, went on to win 4 games. I think you're almost in the same spot here. We'll talk about Riverdale in a few minutes. They have some excitement around their program. But man, if you're Mendota, if you can go on the road and get that win, I think it doesn't matter who you're playing. It's going to build a lot of excitement because you didn't get a win last year. So, all right, let's jump into Monmouth-Roseville. Head coach Jeremy Adolphson in his 25th season coaching high school football. Man, I don't want to call him out of the podcast, but man, that makes him sound old. High school.
I can make him sound old. I'm 27.
Well, I was going to say it's going to make me feel old because I've known him almost the whole time I've been, working in this area, and he's been a, head coach the whole time. So here we are, 25th season, 15th at Monmouth-Roseville. Last year, the Titans were 8-2. They lost in the first round to Paxton Buckley Loda 22-20. So a heartbreaker there for this Monmouth-Roseville squad. They returned 4 on offense. They returned 7 on defense. Give us some of the names here, Ty, of who we should be watching for. It's some names we heard a little bit last year.
I think number one for them is Nick Houston. He plays running back, then he's a defensive end for them / outside linebacker. Really high impact player on the defensive end of the ball for sure. I think he had something like 17 and a half tackles for loss, 9 sacks last year. He's a first team all conference player on the defensive end of the ball. He's kind of one of their key running backs. Their second leading rusher, I guess, is back from last year. And, last season, the big name for them was Peyton Thompson, who they lost to graduation. He was all-state honoree in Class 3A. But they bring 3 running backs back that all played significant time in the backfield. Obviously, the lead back was Thompson, like I just said, but along with Houston, Landon Montroy going into his junior season had a strong sophomore year, I thought, last year for them. Andrew Way, another kid who was a key piece. He got hurt, I think, early in the year, but was able to come back and contribute. So there's a group back there that there are big shoes to fill with Thompson leaving, but I think kind of by committee, those are 3 pretty strong backs as long as they can stay healthy. And the thing with Monmouth-Roseville that just year over year, I think is always the strength for them, especially on the offensive end, is up front. I mean, it feels like every year they just have 5 monsters on the offensive line. They got a couple of first team all conference players back from last year, and Brody Dodd, a tackle, and then Landon Angelo, a guard. And I'm sure they'll be able to slide some kids in terms of replacing a couple of starters they lost last year on the offensive line. So this is a team that I'm pretty high on again this year. maybe not as high of expectations they had coming into 2024, but I think still a team that should compete in the top end of the division for sure.
Yeah, when you look at actually, Jeremy made a joke down the way about, what their team does best. And he said, we don't believe in passing very much or punting at all. So it's kind of a fun side note about the way he, coaches his team. But to that point about not passing very much, I could see this being kind of a running back by committee with Andrew Way, Houston, and Landon Montroy all kind of getting different reps, right? The way it seems like Jeremy runs an offense, they all may contribute in a pretty big way.
Yeah, and really, like you kind of said, what he was saying, they're not really flashy offensively, of course, but what they do they do very well. And it's an offensive system that, he's been around for 15 years. I know it's not always been this way for him, but it's a system that the kids have been around for, a long time, with him being such an established head coach with the program in his 15th season. So there's a lot of familiarity, even though they need to replace, I think, 7 starters on offense, that I'm sure those kids will be able to slide in and contribute very well.
Yeah. You talked about the size and the strength that Monmouth Roseville has year in and year out. He thinks that they'll have that again this year. They may not have the overall speed that they had a year ago, and obviously Thompson was a big part of that speed, but I think that they're hoping to be the most physical team on the field every week, and that will go a long way in finding success for this Monmouth Roseville team. And I think that was a big part last year. They had Thompson, who could make the big plays, but I think that they were going to win being physical up front. That's kind of what they've done best over the years, and I think you'll see a lot of that again this year. So when you start looking at their schedule, they open on the road at Mercer County. So they played in week 1 last year, correct? This is all the schedule flipped from a year ago?
Yes, the schedules are the exact same in the TRAC this year. Just the home and away is flipped for each team. So yes, they did.
Yep. And I believe that would have been Monmouth Roseville coming away with the win in that one. I was trying to remember, was it close early up till halftime maybe?
Mercer County was winning at halftime, 8-6.
Okay.
And then it was something like 35, 36-0 in the third quarter alone. So it got away pretty quickly. But yeah, it was a very good game in the first half.
So Monmouth Roseville looking to get off on the right foot on the road at Mercer County. Anything else about the Titans? Or are we moving along here?
I'm ready to move along. Just, like you were saying, to piggyback off of kind of your last point about them, speaking about just the physicality. That's something that, like we said, they always try to establish. But really, I think last year really impressed everybody and kind of made that statement finally when they beat Princeton the way they did. 31-3 was the score in week 5. So I thought that was such a big win, not just for their season, but for their program, to catapult them to, I think, win an outright conference championship of football for the first time ever as Monmouth Roseville, the consolidated school district. So yeah, last year was a really special year for them, and they're really looking to build on that. And I think still, like I said, even though they lost some talent, a lot of momentum for them coming into 2025.
Jeremy mentioned it, that it's their goal again. Obviously, they want to defend their crown. And he also mentioned they know one of the teams they'll have to go through is the Princeton Tigers. Princeton head coach Ryan Pearson, in his 14th year as a head coach, over 100 wins now, 103 in his coaching career total, 9th season at Princeton, a record of 68-19. So shout out Ty for compiling those records or looking them up. That's impressive. And that's, we've been impressed with Ryan Pearson, and to see his kind of coaching accolades there all kind of spelled out, it's impressive. Last year, they were 10-2. They beat Oregon in the first round of the playoffs. They beat Chicago King in round 2 before losing to Montini in the quarterfinals. It's Princeton's 5th consecutive trip to the 3A quarterfinals before being knocked out by the eventual state champions in Montini. So, again, this is a Tiger program that's making that run to the quarterfinals. But I think when you kind of read a little bit about what Coach Pearson says, they're not satisfied with that. And I think he even used the phrase that it's not good enough. Like, what we're doing right now isn't good enough because we're only making the quarterfinals. So for as much as we talk about how kind of dominant they've been or how much success they've had, I think this team kind of plays with a chip on its shoulder this year, mainly because of the game you just referenced.
Yeah, talking about the Monmouth Roseville game, but really talking
Yeah.
about Princeton in the postseason, I think that to me, the most impressive, and I know maybe Coach Pearson doesn't want to hear it because they're losses, but when you look at the type of programs that it has taken to knock them out of the playoffs, they've got to the quarterfinals in 3A every year since 2019. That was a semifinal appearance for them that year. Since then, they've been eliminated in the quarterfinals. But over those 5 playoff runs, they lost to Byron once, IC Catholic twice, and then Montini twice, who was the 3A state champion last year. So if you're talking about like some of the best quote unquote small school programs in the state, I mean, those three might be 1, 2, and 3 over the past decade or so. So, I mean, it's a hump they have to get over. I know the one year they took IC Catholic to overtime and came up short. They played competitive with Montini last year, but that 3A North is always such a murderer's row. I know that's way down the line to talk about, but they belong in that kind of upper echelon, upper stratosphere, whatever you want to say, of the class of teams in 3A. But yeah, this is a team that it feels like Princeton year over year during this run, they lose a bunch of talent and then they just replace it with a bunch of talent, and they just kind of keep chugging along, where this year they lose about half of their starters on both offense and defense, but have a lot of talent coming back, and I'm sure a lot of talent coming in to kind of plug some of those holes they need to fill from last year. But the top name for them, of course, is Casey Etheridge, who feels like he's played like 10 years at Princeton, rushes for nearly 2,000 yards every year. He was an honorable mention All-Stater last year in 3A, 25 touchdowns again last season. So it'll go through him offensively. Outside of him, they lost, I think, Ace Christensen and Noah Laporte, who's off to Northwestern to play, which Greg is really excited about, right? But
I am.
It's offensively a little bit of holes for them to fill, but like I said, it's hard not to believe in them with just the run they've been on with Coach Pearson at the helm. You read the record, 68-19 and 9 seasons. That's right. He has 8 full seasons. That's pretty impressive.
Yeah. So you mentioned Casey Etheridge. One name that I'm looking at, maybe at a fullback type position, Common Green, was he ran for 265 a year ago, 3 touchdowns. I'm wondering if he's maybe an athlete that fills in where Christensen was kind of getting some running, getting some touches when Etheridge wasn't. But yeah, Etheridge will be a huge cog in what they do. Gavin Lanham, the quarterback, 2-year starter, started last year after Will Lott was injured. Owen Hartman on the offensive line, a 2-year starter, second team all-conference there on the offensive side of the ball as well. On defense for the Tigers, Common Green, a name we just mentioned, at linebacker, 3-year starter, 2-time first team all-conference, 79 tackles a year ago, and 10.5 tackles for loss. So an impact player there. Common Green, I believe, could be an impact player on both sides of the ball. Rhett Pearson on the defensive line, a name we've become familiar with, 3-year starter, 2-time first team all-conference, all-area. Casey Etheridge will do it as a linebacker. He's a 3-year starter, just a great football player all the way around. And names we mentioned, Hartman will be on the defensive line. Lanham will be a defensive back as well. So I think that it's a group of seniors, as Coach said, that's had a good offseason. They, as good of an offseason as any team he's been a part of around football for 25 years. So that's pretty high praise coming from Coach Pearson, who's seen a lot of really good football.
The thing with Coach Pearson and with Princeton, and I'm sure you're going to get into this a little bit, but what's so impressive when you watch them in person is the amount of kids they have in their program. A lot of the times, and we'll get into this with some of the other schools we'll talk about down the line, I'm sure, but participation numbers in football have kind of been trending down, as we've talked about many times over the past few years. But for Princeton, it's the opposite, where a lot of the times, and this isn't an exaggeration, when they're playing, they have double the amount of kids on the sideline than their opponent does a lot of the time, at least. Yeah. And that's such an advantage when you're able to bring kids in and out, especially early in the season. For the first 2 weeks, it feels like it's always 85 plus degrees and kids are cramping on both sides. So for them, especially early in the year, to be able to bring kids in and out and not have to rely so heavily on a bunch of kids playing on both sides of the ball is such an advantage, I think, for them.
Well, you said they have numbers and they have a lot of competition for starting spots. And again, I've referenced that earlier. I think that creates that competition before you start competing against other teams. I think the other thing that's really interesting to point out is he just said, this is a bunch of kids that are very driven. They love the game of football, and they have a big chip on their shoulder, as big as I've ever seen. So I think that is a dangerous, statement when you hear from Princeton, because they've been so good. And he says, again, we referenced it. He said, Coach Pearson said, bottom line, going 41-7 over the last 4 years isn't good enough. We're looking to get over that hump in the 3A quarterfinals and, not have that quarterfinal exit. So, we talk about the accolades, but they kind of use that as motivation, as that chip on their shoulder. Man, for a team with that much talent, that, like I said, that could be a dangerous combo.
Yeah, normally isn't too fun to play them, and that probably is going to be the case again this year, I would think.
Yep. Well, one of the marquee matchups throughout the entire season is happening in week 1. You have Princeton going on the road to Sterling Newman. So that's going to be a really good one right off the bat. We'll talk about the other half of the Three Rivers Athletic Conference. Newman will certainly be in the mix, for a conference crown again, and they open up against Princeton. That's a really good matchup.
Yeah, and then week 2, they play Rock Ridge. So, a really fun weeks 1 and 2 for them, kind of getting tested right out of the gate.
Yep, absolutely. All right, so there's your look at the Princeton Tigers. Let's go to another group of Tigers in Sherrard. Dan McGuire takes over the Sherrard football program. He's in his 11th season coaching high school football as a head coach, his first at Sherrard. This comes 25 years after he coached high school football, where he led Moline to success. So, I know you've had a chance to talk to Coach Ty. Tell us a little bit about Coach McGuire and kind of what to expect here.
Well, talking with both him and then people around the program there's a lot of excitement. Obviously it's been a long time, a quarter of a century since he's been a high school football coach, but he had a lot of success at Moline. 66-32 is his record, leading the Maroons. And like I said, a long time ago, but still, I think there is some optimism there. And I think a lot more so internally than maybe what a lot of people think externally. He's got a few more senior kids who haven't really played before for various reasons to come out that are all expected to contribute on one or both sides of the ball. Their numbers aren't great. I think around 35 or so for the program, but 13 seniors that are all pretty talented kids. And I think that, offensively, it's going to look a lot different in terms of what they're doing. They've been such a pass heavy, spread it out 4 wide, 5 wide looks for them. Sherrard moving forward, I think, is going to kind of bunch it back up. They've got a few running backs that I think are pretty they have chances to be pretty big contributors. The quarterback, Carter Brown, is a kid who has just wowed everybody ever since his freshman year in multiple sports, but football especially. He was Sherrard's first All-Stater in 15 years in football last year. So he'll kind of be the focal point. But when you look at starters returning for them, 9 on offense and 10 on defense. So it's a lot of kids who have played a lot. And last year, they went 2-7, but the amount of injuries they had to deal with when they already were fighting numbers, I think there were multiple games where they had 5 kids who were two-way starters that were out at the same time. So that's really 10 starters when you combine both sides of the ball, where no one's really going to be able to withstand that. Along their offensive line, they bring back, I think, 6 different kids who started at a point last year, 4 of them being seniors who were all starters along the front 5 as sophomores. But like I said, Carter Brown is kind of where it starts and ends for them in terms of, they'll kind of go as he goes, I think. And when you implement a new offense, it's good to have a kid like that at quarterback who, is a high IQ player, really athletic, and the ball being in his hands every play I like, so we'll see kind of how things go once they get going. But there is, from everybody I've talked to, a lot of optimism about what this group could be able to put together if it does come together.
Yeah, I think what I love that I'm hearing from people out in Sherrard is that Coach McGuire is that guy that you want to be great for. You want to play good for him because he's pushing you to be the best version, of yourself. So I think that's a fun kind of, mentality going in, that if he's coming in fired up and ready to turn things around, I think that kind of becomes infectious with the players as well. You talked about Carter Brown. Harrison Curry is a senior receiver that'll be back out there. Emery Partlow is senior. Also, Landon Clark rushed the ball a year ago. He'll be back. And Jackson Jones at wide receiver. So, along with them, that line that you referenced on the defensive side of the ball, Carter Brown certainly did well on both sides, offense and defensive side of the ball. Let's see, Sam Steckel will be back as a senior linebacker, 30 tackles. Partlow, who we referenced, Clayton Dixon, a senior lineman, will be back. So any other names that you read in here that, stand out to you?
Well, I know they're really high on Cooper Thomas, who's the senior that is coming back out, a really strong athlete that they expect to play fullback and inside linebacker for him. Again, a kid who hasn't really been around the program before, but is a really high-level athlete. So slide in a kid like that. There are a couple other of new seniors, like I said, that haven't played before, but are athletes that play other sports at Sherrard that they're hoping to be able to kind of put in there around the returners you already mentioned. If they can stay healthy, I think, like I said off the top, they will be a lot more competitive than maybe the overarching kind of opinion on them is coming into the season.
Yep. So they open on the road at Rock Ridge. So tough start for them, a rivalry game on the road for, the debut of Dan McGuire with Sherrard Tigers. But like you said, if they can stay healthy, I do think there's, potential here with a lot of experience coming back. So see what they can do. One more team to talk about in the Mississippi side of things, Spring Valley Hall. Nick Sterling takes over his first year as head coach. Last year, Hall was 2-7, 1-4 on the TRAC Mississippi side of things. Impact players they return on offense, some names we talked about a year ago, and they were young. They were a young team a year ago, but they have Aiden Redcliffe back at running back, a second-team all-conference player. Braden Curran is a 4-year starter who returns, as well as Dylan Glynn. So some names there on the offensive side of the ball. On defense, Redcliffe is back. He'll be a linebacker. Curran, a defensive back, along with Jacob Mongan on the defensive line, a player we're excited about. They're excited about out there. So what do you think? What have you heard about Spring Valley Hall? What do they have to do here to kind of change that narrative under first-year head coach Nick Sterling?
Well, really similar to Sherrard, from what I've heard, they've got more kids out. And again, they were really, really young last year. Bring back, pretty much all of their contributors, especially at the skill positions offensively. A couple of kids are back that are 4-year starters, and they, I think it's a team that most people are expecting to take a step forward. I am too. I'm really interested to see how big of a step forward they take. The one thing for Hall, though, they just haven't been able to get stability really in the program. I think this is their third head coach in the past 4 years. I think fourth in the last 5 years. So we'll kind of see if Coach Sterling is able to kind of right the ship in that respect. But to me, this is a team that I'm pretty interested in, I should say, seeing how they progress from 2024 to 2025, because I think there's a chance for them to take a pretty big step forward.
Yeah. I mean, first thing they'll have to do from last year, improve defensively. They allowed 36.4 points per game last season. They gave up more than 40 points 5 times. So obviously that's not a recipe that you want. So that'll be something I'm sure they're focused on, and I think from articles I'd read from the Friday Night Drive, a lot of what their focus is just kind of simplifying, making sure they know exactly what the game plan is as they go into it, not kind of learning in weeks 1, 2, and 3, right? Like already knowing and feeling comfortable and confident going into week 1 as they get started. So see if Nick Sterling can, kind of change things around there. They will start on the road at Orion. So we'll get into Orion in a few minutes, but that's a game where, two teams have an opportunity there to jump out and grab an early season victory and grab a little momentum.
Big game for both teams there, trying to get things rolling in the right direction. I think you go in, both teams, again, like you said, we'll get into Orion in a moment, but winnable, I think, for both teams to start the season.
Yep. All right, so that's our look at the Three Rivers, Mississippi side of things. So overall, Ty, give me your thoughts on this conference.
Well, even though Monmouth Roseville won the conference a year ago, I think the favorite again this year is Princeton, like they have been coming into every season the last 5, 6, 7 years. Just the amount of talent and production they have back, I think is kind of why I'm putting them as my favorite. I do think the way that the league is set up this year on that side, there's, I think, a divide of, the top two teams and then, the rest, where I think Monmouth Roseville can compete with Princeton as good as, anybody else in the league can. But once you get past those two, I think like the rest of those teams, they play each other, Kewanee, Mendota, Hall, and Sherrard. I mean, those I think should be all pretty competitive games where they'll be kind of jockeying underneath them. But I think Princeton, Monmouth Roseville are pretty easy, I think, 1-2 in the league this year, just because of the teams underneath. Like Kewanee was third in the league last year, but lost so much. And I don't think those other teams, even with their amount of returners, are going to be able to make a big enough jump to catch up to Monmouth Roseville or Princeton.
So here you go. You start the season by saying that Princeton is the favorite to win the conference. They're the ones playing with a chip on their shoulder, but I think you just gave Monmouth Roseville the chip on their shoulder now.
Maybe.
It's already... Jeremy Adolphson already has it tacked up in the locker room as he's listening to this.
And hopefully it works out for him. Coach Adolphson and I are both from Aledo. We're both proud Aledo, Illinois, I guess, products, you could say. So, yeah, I'm always rooting for him. But I think I said it last year and he proved me wrong. So he can try to do it again, I guess.
Yeah. No, and this is a good reminder. I want to give a shout out to, you compiled a list of a media poll and a coaches poll for both sides of the Three Rivers Athletic Conference. It's available now at WRMJ.com. Really great write-ups on every team from both sides of the conference. So kudos to you. It's a lot of work to coordinate all of it, and I give you credit. I encourage people to go out there and check it out. It's very informative. It's a good piece that, a good companion piece for this podcast, I would say.
100%. And thank you to Greg Armstrong and the noticeably absent Mitch Stormer, who are both a part of our media poll. So thank you to both of you guys.
All right, well, let's take a quick break, and we'll jump into the Three Rivers Athletic Conference on the Rock Division. This episode of View from the West podcast is brought to you by Simulation Sports. In addition to golf simulators and batting cages, Simulation Sports provides golf club repair, custom fittings for driver shafts, and even private lessons for golf, baseball, and softball. Whether you're looking for a fun group activity or want to fine-tune your skills and equipment, Simulation Sports has something for everyone. Visit their facility at 400 South Main Street in Monmouth, Illinois, or go to thesimulationsports.com to start playing today.
Shouldn't financial advice focus on you? I can help you plan for your financial future, from protection to saving to retirement. I'm Nate Neighbor, your Modern Woodman representative. Call me at 309-233-2656 or find me on the Modern Woodman website.
Get to know your local Modern Woodman representative to plan for your financial future and learn about valuable member benefits. Modern Woodman of America. Touching lives, securing futures. Securities offered through MWA Financial Services, Inc., a wholly owned subsidiary of Modern Woodman of America.
The View from the West Player of the Week is brought to you by Breedlove Sporting Goods, Western Illinois' premier sporting goods store for uniforms, apparel, equipment, awards, and online team stores. They offer name brands such as Adidas, Under Armour, and Nike, and are extremely responsive with any inquiries. With a primary focus on the western side of the state of Illinois, Breedlove Sporting Goods is the fastest way to outfit your team. You can check them out on Facebook or at breedlovesports.com, or shoot Cal Breedlove an email at calbreedlove@gmail.com.
This is Dan Pearson of Fellowship of Christian Athletes. Our FCA team of staff, board, and volunteers is pleased to support View from the West with Greg and Mitch. Our Northwest Illinois FCA team is 3 teams in 1, serving coaches and athletes in the Three Rivers, Northern Illinois, and Greater Peoria areas, all with schools covered by View from the West. For more information, email me at danpearson@fca.org. FCA, the heart and soul in sports.
Hey, this is Brett Bielma, the head coach of the Fighting Illini from Prophetstown, Illinois. You're listening to the View from the West podcast.
Welcome back to View from the West podcast. We're through the TRAC Mississippi side of things, jumping into the Three Rivers Athletic Conference ROC division. Before we jump into it, I do want to give a quick plug to Breedlove Sporting Goods. We got t-shirts coming back this year for sale. There's some exciting stuff around some teams in the Three Rivers Conference that we're going to be getting some merch out for. Some things we had last year that will still be available. I need to get you I still call it the Olympic shirt, because that that campaign that your dad's put that campaign on for years. So I need to get you that I still call it the Olympic t-shirt.
I do. I need one. He needs one too. And the thing is, he's been on that for so long, and it feels like they finally got some momentum now. Especially we talked about this side of the league with Mercer County, Rock Ridge, and Orion all in here, and then we just talked about Sherrard and Monmouth, Roseville. You guys talked about Macomb and Farmington and Knoxville last week. That's what we love, right? But
yep.
I want one of the traction shirts too. I like that one.
Oh, the Friday night traction. Jeremy Adolphson, head coach Jeremy Adolphson bought that one last year. So I should really push him to wear it on the sidelines when he's coaching. That's what I should do.
He should. Or maybe you guys could be like an NIL deal for them.
That's so, yes, thank you to Breedloves. We're going to get a merch shop open very soon. We'll keep you informed on that. Follow along on our social medias. We'll keep you informed on that. One tease that I let out last week, if you like the old retro style, the Tecmo Bowl kind of look, we got some t-shirts coming in that direction I'm really excited about. So I don't want to give too much away, but it's going to be really cool. So anyway, all right, let's jump in. The Three Rivers Athletic Conference ROC division. Now, conferences are kind of like your kids. I can't say I have a favorite kid. Matt Randazzo does say he has his favorite kid, but most people don't say that, but I will say this conference, this division inside of the Three Rivers might be my favorite division of anyone we cover. This year is fascinating in this side of the division.
It really is. And my parents have a favorite child too, and it's my younger sister, Tess. But it really is. We'll get into each of the teams, but really, I think every week, kind of similar to the other side of the league, where I think there's a top two that most people agree on coming in, but the pack is a lot closer to the top two on this side, in my opinion. And also, like those 3, 4, 5, 6 teams could go in any order. They might all beat each other all year and all finish like 2 and 3 or something in the league. Where like you could see, Riverdale, Mercer County, Erie, Provincetown, Orion, those games when they play each other, I think will all be really, really competitive all year long. So like you said, I'm really intrigued to see how 1 through 6 really all shakes up coming into the year, because there's a lot of different orders that could end up in, I think.
Yeah, I just think there's going to be a lot of back and forth in this conference. There's going to be week in and week out some games that are just toss-ups. You just don't know what to predict, a winner. So let's jump into it. A lot of intriguing storylines in this conference. We'll start with Erie Prophetstown. Head coach Tyler Whitebread, his 3rd season out there. The Panthers were 5-5 last season. They had a tough playoff loss on the road at Bismarck, Henning, Rossville, Alvin. That was a 9-0 football team. They lost 14-6 in the 2A state playoffs in the first round. I remember going into it that week, Erie Prophetstown, fans and the team kind of felt good about that matchup. They really thought that they were battle tested and could do something in that game. And they played a great football game. They were winning that one late. They fall short 14-6. But I think that is a springboard into this season. There's a lot of excitement here. They return 8 on offense, they return 6 on offense, 8 on defense. And I think that based on what you saw at the end of last year and throughout the season, there's a lot to be excited about this year.
100%. And you mentioned that playoff game last year. I mean, they were up, I think, 6-0 through the 3rd quarter. And then pretty late in the 4th quarter, they were still leading 6-0 before Bismarck, Henning, Rossville, Alvin scored a couple of touchdowns late to be able to pull that one out at home for them. And that was a really long trip for, Erie Provincetown all the way across the state, basically over towards the Indiana border. But when you look at this Panthers team in 2025, a really key loss was Dimitri Larson, who was such a high-impact player on both sides of the ball. He kind of was hobbled with injuries throughout the year last year, but really led them on the offensive end. They do have a nice core of kids back that I think as a whole will be able to kind of slide together and fill in that void that he leaves. led by Keegan Winkler, their senior quarterback, who spent some time his freshman year as a starting quarterback and has been a part of basically 4 years of varsity football. He's a 4-year varsity basketball player at Erie Prophetstown as well. So a kid who's been around a lot of athletics. His dad's the boys basketball coach at Erie Prophetstown. Love Coach Winkler. So he's like a kid that's a very high IQ player because he's been around sports like his whole life, playing so much on both the football field and the basketball court at the varsity level. And then, a few receivers are back for them. Connor Keegan's a really strong athlete. This will be his 3rd year starting out wide for them. Gavin Adams, another 3-year starter. And I know kind of what hurts them a little bit is Max Milam, who's a kid who had a high impact year as a junior last year. He suffered, I think, a knee injury in summer basketball. I'm not really sure what the full timeline is for him. I think they're hoping they might be able to get something out of him in the football season, but I think that's up in the air. He had a really good year last year. He caught the game-winning touchdown in the game. They beat Mercer County in the final seconds. A great game in week 5 last year. So on the offensive end, some pieces to replace depending on what his availability is. Up front, they were pretty strong last year. I think they bring back 3 offensive linemen. 2 of them were sophomores that played both ways in Caleb Reamer and Derek Knopsker, who were strong 2-way players. And you mentioned on the defensive end, 8 starters back on a defensive unit. It was solid last year, I thought, for the most part. So maybe this year they'll be making their name on the defensive end, trying to, hold teams down enough for that offense to be able to score.
Yeah. How tricky does it get when Keegan Winkler throws a pass to Connor Keegan? Do you get does that get tricky for you play by play?
Well, it's hard. Yes, it does. And they're both they both have played basketball at the varsity level for 4 years too. So Keegan Winkler to Keegan, it's like you're saying the same kid, but yeah, it's funny. And they're spelled the same way, Keegan, Keegan.
Yes. It is really funny.
They should get their booster club should sell shirts or something with the 2 of them on it, like Step Brothers.
That's right. Yeah. Yeah. So Coach Whitebread references he feels good about their skill positions. Many of those guys were starters last year, like we referenced. They've worked hard throughout this offseason to get ready. He likes the defensive line, which is kind of anchored by Knopsker and Reamer, both first team all conference ability. So he thinks that they're right there as some of the best in the conference when you're talking about line play. Overall team speed, he thinks, is a plus for this group. He says they got to replace some offensive linemen. And offensively, we have run the ball 85% in the past. We're hoping to balance it out a little more. So they have been a little more run. Now they're looking to maybe equal it out a little bit more. And defensively, they want to pay attention to stopping the run. Last year, they got a little inconsistent at that, he thought. But he references the big thing is stay healthy, stop the run and then create explosive plays on offense. It's, kind of formulaic type stuff early in the season, but all very important things. But again, this is an Erie Prophetstown team. We talked about they open on the road, or will they open at home against Kewanee? They'll be at home. A game last year, they came away with a victory when maybe it kind of surprised us a little bit. I'm interested to see what they can do in this one.
That feels like one of those toss-up games, and a lot of times in week 1 you don't really know because I feel like football teams fluctuate so much from year to year. But that's one of those games. It feels like most of the games in the league in week 1 are kind of those toss-ups where it's really important as a lot of these teams. It feels like, as we've talked about, there's so much parity, and it feels like a lot of the teams are pretty even that all those games are so important. All those wins you can try to get are so important to try to get the postseason. So, yeah, that's another one of those games that I think will be really fun to follow in week 1 is that Erie Prophetstown Kewanee matchup.
Yep. All right, well, let's keep moving down the way here. Mercer County, the Golden Eagles, head coach Fred Lucas, his first year as the head coach at Mercer County, been an assistant for the past 4 seasons, but he's been a head coach in the past. So he had in recent stops at Roseville, Yorkwood, the former co-op out there, Westwood, and then United most recently, and had at least one team that went to the playoffs out there when he was at United. So, have you caught up with Coach Lucas and give me a little bit of background on him taking over the program here?
Yeah, so I've talked with Coach Lucas a couple of times this summer. He's been assistant for Mercer County for 8 seasons, so he's been around the program for
Oh,
a
okay.
long time. Through now, he's going to be, I think, the 4th acting head coach in the last 4 years, as Mercer County had to finish last year with the interim head coach with some things that went on off the field that were unfortunate for them. But that's kind of what the story ended up being last year. It just felt like they never really were able to get into a rhythm for what felt like a variety of reasons that weren't really on the field. So I know that's something that they're trying to fix, is just making, it week to week being the focus just the opponent we're playing, and not all this other crazy stuff that's going on off the field that kind of, plagued them from week 1 through week 9 last year. So they do have a group that's back that is very senior heavy. A lot of kids played a lot of downs for them on both sides of the ball. Now, Mercer County, too, will look a lot differently offensively, like we talked about with Sherrard earlier. Mercer County last year, a very spread-oriented team, never really went under center, shotgun, 3 wide receivers, 4 wide receivers most of the time. This year, they're going to switch it up and play predominantly out of the wing T. So John Baldwin, their quarterback who returns, was state-level sprinter. He was a part of Mercer County's, I think, a couple of relay teams that medaled down at the state track and field meet in 1A. I've always thought, last year, some of their best plays offensively were when they got him in space, kind of getting out of the pocket. So I assume, they'll have some design quarterback runs out of that set for him. Mason Gray had a great year last year, almost rushed for 1,000 yards, rushed for 371 yards in one game against Orion last year. He kind of slid in. He started the year as a wide receiver, slid into play running back after Mercer County's starting tailback, Tannen Whitehall, got hurt in the first game of the season last year against Monmouth Roseville and never really returned. He was a junior last year. He'll return from injury after basically missing his whole junior year, a huge piece for them to get back. He was also on those relay teams we mentioned a moment ago for Mercer County down at the state track and field meet. So his sophomore year when Mercer County was in the Lincoln Land Conference for football at that point, I think that was the first year the leagues came together. He was a second-team all-conference player, I think, as a sophomore that year. Again, missed last year with the injury. So and then offensive line wise, they've got 4 kids back, I think, that were spent some time as starters in 2024. Caden Carroll is their left tackle, who everybody, internally from Mercer County and then their opponents last year has raved about the type of offensive lineman that he is. He kind of anchors them on that side of the ball. So there is talent there for Mercer County. Again, the schedule is tough. And like we said, so many of these games are toss-ups, but they're a interesting team, I think, this year. The tradition of the Mercer County program, of course, is very storied. You date back to Alito 2. Now, recently hasn't quite been there really with playoff success. They missed the playoffs last year for the first time since 1994, basically. So kind of a rare thing to happen for the program. But I think this is a team definitely that will be in the mix to try to get back to the playoffs this year.
Do you think that, off the field issues aside, do you think that this team looks different if Whitehall stays on the field and healthy for last season? Do you think that 100%. Was that?
I think so, because really their losses, except for the Erie Provincetown game, the other teams that they lost to, they were going to lose regardless because they weren't really very competitive in those games. Monmouth, Roseville, Rockridge, Princeton, and Newman. But, it's hard to say that he wouldn't have maybe been a couple of points difference where they lose to Erie Provincetown in the final second. So I think if he doesn't get hurt, that's a team that maybe not probably, but has a chance to win, in week 5 against Erie Provincetown and get to the playoffs. It's a big loss because he was such a key player. He returned kicks. He was slated to return kicks, and they had a lot of special teams issues last year too. Running back, of course, it would have been huge to have him. And then he was a starting safety for them last year too. So he was a big loss for sure. So I know that they're really, really excited to have him back, and hopefully he can stay healthy.
Yeah, I just look at what Mason Gray was able to do last year, maybe kind of stepping in replacement of him. But I was really excited about Whitehall before the season and then never got to see it, and I know that was a bummer for Mercer County. It was a bummer for us following along because it was a name we wanted to see on the field. but you have John Baldwin back there as well. So when you start reading through the names and kind of what they were able to accomplish in some flashes last year, I think there's a lot to be excited about here for, Fred Lucas taking over. And I think if you can get everybody pulling in the same direction and kind of move past last year and really have that focus back, on what matters, right? Developing, being competitive every week, playing, high-end football. I think there's a shot here for Mercer County to, I think it's a very good chance they get into back in the playoffs, which is, like you said, it seems weird not having them there. So I think that we're, just accustomed to them being there. I think they have a very good shot of getting back there. So they open, like we talked about, they will open at home against Monmouth Roseville. So it'll be a tough one out of the gates, I think, for them right away, because I think we know that Monmouth Roseville can be big and physical. So their offensive line, which they talked about being a strength for them, that being Mercer County, I think that they're going to be tested right in that first game.
Yeah, 100%. And, for them, it'll be interesting to see, because that's what they're going to want to try to mirror what Monmouth Roseville's strengths are. They want to be really big and physical up front and kind of run behind that offensive line, out of the wing tee with two really high-level backs, I think. So week one will be really intriguing to see how Mercer County stacks up with, probably a team that most people think is one of the best up front in the league in Monmouth Roseville. At least they normally are year in and year out, where even if Mercer County loses that game but competes with them up front, I think that'll say good things about what the rest of the year can hold for them.
Yep. All right, so before we wrap up, Fred Lucas had a coaching stop at Roseville Yorkwood. I have a Roseville Yorkwood football jersey in my closet right over here behind me. So there you go.
That is amazing. Where in the world did you get that from?
So I got it in a garage sale, like a school district garage sale, I believe, that would have run through Monmouth United. That would make sense, right? If all that stuff ended up at the United School District. So you can credit Dan Pearson and Nick Bull knew about this garage sale, and they went out. I was out of town or I couldn't go, but they went out and rummaged through some boxes and found some stuff and probably paid a couple bucks, and I got it in there. So, yeah.
I saw someone actually a couple of months ago wearing a Westwood Wolfpack football sweatshirt. And that was only a co-op for like 2 years between Westmer and Yorkwood, which are both no longer school districts. Westmer is part of Mercer County, Yorkwood a part of United. But that is probably one of the most rare pieces of IHSA football merchandise. I told the person, I'm like, there are not many people who have a Westwood Wolfpack sweatshirt. You should try to sell that to some nerd historian that would probably want to get one of those. I was like, that's awesome, man. So that's Coach Lucas was one of the head coaches at Westwood too. So
yeah. That's me and Mitch. We're the nerd historians. We want that. We want that gear. I should ask. I should ask if Breedloves has that. If they were the ones who made it, that would be huge.
That'd be great. Yes.
I could find the old template and we could just, bust it back out. So there you go. All right, let's get into the Orion Chargers. Another team here. Again, I think every team we talk about in this division, it's just fascinating storylines. There's just a lot of interesting things coming into this 25 football season. So Orion head coach Chip Filler in his 17th season. Man, Orion has had lean times the last couple years, but credit where it's due here. I did not realize that Chip Filler's overall record, 94-65. I mean, I knew, how good they were several years ago. So it's, 6 wins away from 100. So that's remarkable. It's been a great run for Chip Filler here.
Yeah, they've had, especially like the mid to early 2010s, into the late 2010s too, really. That whole decade, they were really competitive, of course. Now we can say they had an NFL player play for them in that span with Logan Lee, who was drafted by the Pittsburgh Steelers last year, who went on to play at Iowa collegiately. But yeah, the last couple of years, they've struggled with numbers. Really, last year, that was kind of the big issue with them. I think it was anywhere from week to week, 21 to 24 kids they had in the whole program. Impressively, they were able to make it through the whole year and play all 9 games. I was really concerned right off the bat that I will admit that I thought there's no way they're going to play all 9 games with 21 kids. There's just no way they're going to get through it. But they did, and I think those kids deserve a lot of credit for that. This year, their numbers are back up. I was talking with Coach Filler. He said he believes they'll be around 38, so mid to upper 30s for them this year, which is, 15, 16, 17 more kids than they had last year. And they've got a really, I think solid senior group. While the numbers still aren't great, which you'll get into, I'm sure, some of the stuff about Cale Filler, who's had just a magnificent individual career at Orion as the quarterback going into his 4th year. They have some weapons offensively. And one thing about Orion with Coach Filler's tenure there for 17 years coming into his 7th year, it's a program that has never not been able to score. I mean, they're always strong offensively. It feels like year in and year out. I think they scored last year. They had the 4th best offense in terms of points per game last season. Now, they really struggled on the defensive end, of course, last year. But offensively, they can put up points and they can score with just about anybody and play against anybody, too. So that's one thing, again, this year. It's going to, I think, be led by what they can do on the offensive end of things.
Yeah. You referenced it, and I think it's funny that Chip Filler mentioned me. I actually saw them at a 7-on-7 at Assumption High School here. It was several Illinois schools. Those season preview videos are out on our YouTube channel right now. You can check those out. But cool to catch up with Coach Filler and his son Cale as they start, the head coach and senior season together on the sidelines for Orion. But he referenced that, over the course of his time at Orion, that he's found himself some years coaching a future NFL football player, and then some years you're coaching a group of kids that just really get after it and want to play hard-nosed football. And both are great, right? So it's just like you try to find a way to work with it, and it's just that's kind of the ups and downs of small 1A, 2A football, is that, some years are lean, some years are robust, and you got a lot of talent. And I think it's finding that, medium ground and winning football games with them. To your point, I think there is a lot of talent in this senior class that's really been building towards this season. It starts with Cale Filler, leading passer in the conference last year after throwing for over 2,000 yards for the 2nd consecutive season. He threw 18 touchdowns a year ago, along with 200 yards on the ground and 4 touchdowns, 2A All-State honorable mention. Filler enters this season as already holding the career record at Orion for completions, for passing attempts, for passing yards, passing touchdowns, and total touchdowns. And as you said, Orion hasn't struggled to score going back years, so those accomplishments are remarkable considering some of the quarterbacks and the athletes they had on the offensive side of the ball.
Yeah, and he's got a really great top target back this year in senior classmate Owen Voorhees, who is a really dynamic kick and punt returner. But when you look at him just as a wide receiver last year, 46 catches, 764 yards, 3 touchdowns. He returned 3 kickoffs for touchdowns last year too. He's a really good athlete and wideout for them. So those are kind of the big 2 for them. They also have a couple of other receivers that are back that as the year progressed last year, they got more and more involved in the offense with Aaron Moore, who caught 27 catches, or he caught 27 passes, I should say, 315 yards and 2 touchdowns as a sophomore last year. And then, when you talk about this Orion team too, when you go through their results from last year, even though they went 2-7, as the year progressed, they had a tough start to the year, but they really competed a lot better at the tail end of the year. They only lost to Riverdale by 2 points, I believe. They hung around with Kewanee. That was a 10-point game in week 9. And they, I thought, played Rock Ridge pretty competitive last year. That game wasn't as close as the others, but they hung in there a lot better than I thought, a lot of people probably projected coming into that game. So they got a lot better as the year progressed last season, I thought, even though the wins weren't necessarily there. And they bring virtually everybody back. I think they had something like 3 or 4 seniors last year. So it's a team that, again, like a couple of other teams we've talked about, has the chance to take a pretty big step forward in 2025. I expect them to compete with the teams we mentioned, Mercer County, Riverdale, and Erie Prophetstown too, in the kind of second tier of the Rock division in terms of kind of trying to get to the back of the playoffs. I think they're a team that I would not be shocked, I would say, if they end up winning 5 games potentially. I think they could do that.
Yeah, I think the pieces are there for sure. So, you talked about the struggle. The improvement needs to come defensively. They were putting up points last year, but, it seemed like a lot of games they ran out of gas. And I think a part of it was low numbers, and they struggled defensively. They bring back 8 defensive starters led by defensive back Max Larson. I think Max Larson is also someone that Chip Filler is really excited about on the offensive side of the ball as a wide receiver. So that's, a two-way player to really watch for that could be an impact on both sides of the ball. Wyatt Steen, Carson Peck also back on the defensive side of the ball were honorable mentions last year, all conference players. So, I think, Chip talked about it in the interview I had with him that, starting defensively, they got to find some stops. And if you can find some stops, that creates more momentum for that offense to really do what they do. And yeah, I think that if there's a little more depth and there's just a little more experience on the defensive side of the ball that maybe they've learned through some growing pains a year ago, I think this offense will continue to produce. And yeah, that could be, that successful, the way to win some football games. They open at home against Spring Valley Hall. So I think we talked a little bit about Hall and what they have, but that's a winnable game in week 1 to get off the bat right away.
Yeah, if Orion beat them last year on the road, it feels like a broken record, but just another game that I think will say a lot about where each team is based on who wins and who loses, as both Hall and Orion are teams that I think have playoff hopes coming into the year after kind of challenging years in 2024. So another one we'll be following for sure closely when we kick off the season here later this month.
Yep. All right. Let's get into Rock Ridge, the Rockets. So just down the road from Orion, Rock Ridge Rockets head coach Sam Graves in his 10th season. So he is 5 wins shy of tying Rick Amy as the winningest football coach in school history. So quite an accolade there for Sam Graves as he continues to build a resume of winning football in Rock Ridge.
Yeah, he's done a great job. Now that's split across 2 separate tenures as head coach at Rock Ridge, but just every year they're solid. It feels like they're always a team that isn't just a playoff team, but a team that you expect to, play into mid to late November, year in and year out. Last year they won the playoff game and then lost in kind of a wet, sloppy rain game in Farmington where they just couldn't quite score enough points to win. But they've won a playoff game 3 years in a row. We're a quarterfinalist a few years ago before losing to Maroa Forsyth at home that season. So I think high expectations for them again in 2025. We'll talk about them a lot today probably, and a lot throughout the season, and a lot throughout next year too. Cullen Schweigen is just as good as they come. To me, he's by far the best individual player in this conference in terms of just what he can do at the quarterback position, throwing, running. He just is as good as they come in small school football. Last year, 1,866 yards passing, a single season school record through 18 touchdowns. And he also rushed for 677 yards and 14 touchdowns, which was a single season touchdown record as well, 32 combined between passing and rushing. So, for them offensively, obviously it goes through the quarterback. He was an all-state selection, honorable mention. One of just 3 players in the whole state, and that's just not 2A. That's every single class from 8-man to 8A. There were 3 sophomores in the whole state who were in some sort of all-state selection, and the kid that plays quarterback for Rock Ridge was one of them, and it was very well deserved. He just is really fun to watch play the game. So 5 starters back on both sides of the ball, but when you have a returner like him who's such a big time playmaker, that is, when you have a kid like that, you got to have high expectations. So I'm expecting another, really solid year for the Rockets in football.
Yeah, absolutely. A difference maker, impact player on the field. You said it all there. Really impressive resume so far, and still has 2 years left. He'll be throwing to the Steele brothers, Owen Steele and Liam Steele, both coming back. So Owen had 770 yards, 12 touchdowns. Liam had just over 300 yards and 1 touchdown. He'll also have Chase Wheatley. So one Wheatley brother has graduated, but there is one other Wheatley brother here for him to throw to. Chase Wheatley had 225 yards last year receiving and 1 touchdown. So I think there's some familiar names there to go along with. Thomas Sowards is back at running back, correct? And he ran the ball for him last year a little bit.
He'll be a junior, yeah.
Yep. So when you start looking at, they have a good number of returning skill players. And I think that's a great start when you talk about some of the names there. What do we look for on defense?
Well, defensively for them, it's interesting, and the names they have to replace are big names, both on defense, but on offense too. Talking about Jude Finch, who was an all-stater, played center on offense, and has been a defensive lineman basically the last 3 years as a standout player for them. Landon Bull, an all-stater for 2 years at both offensive tackle and then a linebacker. So those are the two really big losses on the defensive end for them that they're going to have to try to replace. I talked with Coach Graves last week. They held a 7-on-7 thing with a few teams to basically wrap up the summer. That's what he said. He's like, our big question mark is, along the offensive line where we lost 3 starters, needing to replace, mainly Jude and Landon Bull. And then the defensive end is the same thing, where they have a really solid nucleus of kids back, but just the type of production they got for really 4 years out of both Bull and Finch on defense is such a big hole for them to fill. Now, what will help them a little bit is that Ryan Lower, who was a starting linebacker as a freshman a few years ago, had a great year as a sophomore last year, kind of like what we were talking about in Mercer County with Cannon Whitehall. He suffered Ryan Lower did a season-ending knee injury in the second game of the year against Princeton, and he'll come back and he'll slide in. I think he was playing offensive guard last year and then outside linebacker, I believe. So he'll be back. He's cleared to go. He is a huge addition to a defense that is really good year in, year out. Kind of the same kids we mentioned on offense. The Steels, Owen and Liam are back. Chase Whitley, I think, will slide in one of their defensive back spots. Thomas Sowards was a middle linebacker as a sophomore last year that had a really strong year. And Tanner McKegg has been a really high-level defensive lineman for them the past couple of years. He's a senior. I believe this will be his 3rd year starting on the defensive side of the ball. But I think one of the more interesting things, and I talked about this with Coach Graves too last week, is it looks like they're going to play Colin Schweigen on defense this year. Now, he hasn't played defense his freshman or sophomore year. At the 7-on-7 thing I was referencing a couple of minutes ago, he was playing outside linebacker there, talking with Coach Graves. I interviewed him. It's on our website. He said they're looking at him potentially playing outside linebacker, corner, or safety, with the rationale being, one, Rockridge has always had their quarterbacks play defense traditionally, and he said he's one of our best defenders, and it feels like we owe it to our kids to have him out there. The only thing for me, if that kid gets hurt, you are in big trouble, because I don't know what their backup quarterback situation is. I don't know if they even have one, really. And the level of player that Schweigen is, if you have him, you're like a team that says we could be a Final Four state championship type team. If we don't have him, we might not win a game. You know what I mean? So it's like one of those things where you just risk versus reward. Hopefully he's able to stay healthy, because he'll be a high impact player on defense. I'm hoping he can play. And real quick, going back to offense, you mentioned Owen Steele. Just watching him, I know it's 7-on-7. He looked so impressive that day. And you mentioned his number, 770 receiving yards and 12 touchdowns. He's one of the top receivers, playmakers around, and that's a really good, passing connection, Schweigen to Steele. So I think they'll be just fine. They're another one of those programs that lose really high-level players every year, but just it feels like they always find the replacements. Their numbers are a little bit lower than normal too, but I'm expecting this Rockridge team to definitely battle atop the conference for a conference title. We'll talk more about that when we get done with all the teams, though, right? So we'll tease ahead to that.
That's absolutely. So 2 things there. I believe, was it Tanner McKegg that had the blocked punt that led to Landon Bull's scoop and score?
He did. Yes, he did.
So he gets credit in that highlight for sure, because he did the hard part. He had to block the ball, and then, Landon was able to get in the end zone for his one and only touchdown So anyway, I had to point that out, and I'm really excited to see Ryan Lower back on the field. He's a kid that when you watched him play a couple years ago, just a really, high motor type of kid, right? Like just real high energy and just seems like he really gets after it. And so it was really tough to see him be down last year and not be playing. So I'm really excited to see him back into the mix for Rock Ridge. Let's see. Rock Ridge opens at home, as we referenced, against Sherrard. So that rivalry there, starting off in week 1. In week 2, they go on the road to Princeton. So I think you really, Mitch and I joke that coaches and teams can't look ahead, but we can. So, we're allowed to do that. So I think that's where Rock Ridge really has to get everything set up, everything in place. And obviously you want to get the win in week 1, but then it's that matchup in week 2 on the road at Princeton, I think is huge.
I love looking ahead. I'm ready for week 2. That'll be a fun one. But like we said with Princeton, they get Newman week 1. The first couple weeks will be fun games. Fun games for sure.
Yeah. I'm telling you, like, every week there's going to be games in this conference that are just intriguing that you just don't know how to pick. So let's keep moving down the way here. The Riverdale Rams. Proud alum Brian Stocking, so excited for the Riverdale Rams, always, but definitely heading into 25 here. Head coach Guy Derricks, 4-5 last year, 2-3 in divisional play. As we well discussed, 3 years removed from having to cancel a varsity season, Riverdale looking to get back into the playoffs for the first time since 2011. They just missed it a year ago. They lost to Hall on the road, 35-32. So they just missed out last year. Ty, we were excited about it. We were following this storyline last year. I think there's good reason for excitement and optimism in Riverdale to get to a playoff berth that doesn't happen very often in this program.
I absolutely agree. And so last year when we did this, the team I was highest on was Monmouth Roseville, I think, of everybody in terms of year-to-year improvement. For me, it's Riverdale this year, and I expect them to not just be a playoff team. I think they're at least going to win a playoff game this year. I really do. I'm super high on what this program has been able to do with Coach Derricks, what this group of kids that's been able to do. Like you said, everybody involved deserves so much credit for getting back from having to cancel a season. I mean, a lot of the times when programs cancel a season, it's over. It's dead. They're never coming back. Riverdale was able to do that. They struggled that first year back, were extremely competitive last year. I mean, really, really competitive. I remember talking with Coach Derricks because we covered their game week 9 against Sherrard after they lost to Hall the week before by 3 points. And he picked up the phone, I was like, man, that was a heartbreaker. And he called it a heart ripper is what he said. So I know it's a group that they bring basically everybody back really in terms of their really high level contributors. They are probably going to remember what that felt like, missing the playoffs by 3 points basically. I just really like the group they have back. It's a system they buy into. So like I said, I'm expecting them to hopefully get to the playoffs. I really like Coach Derricks, and really I'm hoping if they do get to the playoffs and if they do win a game, I'm expecting a Riverdale Rams playoff hoodie sent to the WRMJ studios for me from Coach Derricks. So
I love it. We'll get one for Stocking too. He'll proudly rock that gear. He'll shave his head too when they make the playoffs. He said he would do that, or we said he would do that. What's one of the two?
Well, I was gonna say, I was shocked that he wasn't here because this is like the team everybody's been talking about is Riverdale, man, and Stocking's not here to sing the fight song or whatever. He's probably getting ready for Tugfest, right? That's like next weekend, I think, right?
Oh, he's ready for Tugfest. Yeah.
He's gonna be anchoring that tug of war team on the Illinois side, Brian Stocking.
That's right. Somewhere Dan Pearson has video of Brian Stocking singing the theme song from Friends at karaoke at Tugfest back in 1998. So we'll have to get that out on social media. So
I'd love
anyway, back to the football field. The impact players coming back for Riverdale this year: Kane Beckett, a running back, over 1,000 combined yards, 11 touchdowns. Gage Henson, a running back, over 700 rushing yards, 8 touchdowns. Also, Riley Schillinger, a running back who should make a difference here. And then we got to give love to the offensive line, anchored by Marcus Bennett, Jackson Fritsch, along with Jake Shradia. Did I say that right?
Shradia.
Shradia. There you go. Thank you. That's why you're the conference insider, Ty. That's why. Shradia.
I think that's how Coach Derek told me it was pronounced, but that was like a year ago when he told me that, so I might be wrong. But I'm hoping I'm right.
Carter Orr, and Bo Ziegler, a couple other names there. So got to give love to the offensive line. On the defensive side of the ball, Jackson Tegler, he also had, contributions on offense, but he had 80 tackles, 3 interceptions. Another defensive back, Landon Peterson. Linebackers, Brady Rogers, Abram Cryer, and Elliott Fries also on the defensive line. So just a lot here coming back, a lot of impact players back. And again, a team that was really close. I think there's, that good reason for excitement here. Riverdale opens the season at home against Mendota. So again, a Mendota program that's been struggling. This is a winnable football game. They then go on the road to Kewanee and on the road to Rock Ridge. So I think you want to get off on the right foot there against Mendota in week 1.
Well, and I really like their running backs that you mentioned. They got all 3 starters back, but really their top 2 of Beckett and then Heinsohn. They're really, I think, complement each other really well. They're very different types of athletes and runners, where having them both back there, and I know Beckett's a kid he was a very good pass catcher too for them, over 1,000 all-purpose yards last year. They're both seniors, but something else I think that's important to note about this Riverdale team, a lot of these kids that are projected to be producers for them this year are juniors that all were big-time producers as sophomores a year ago. And I feel like, in high school football, there's always a really big jump from a kid's sophomore year to his junior year, and then junior to senior year too, of course. But really that sophomore to junior jump, I feel like you see kids really improve. So like Tegler, you mentioned, is a kid that's going to be a junior. He's a really, great multi-sport athlete for them. And those 2 offensive linemen, Bennett and Fritsch, were, and they contribute on the defensive end too, both sophomores last year that are now juniors this year. So, this Riverdale program, it's not like they've just, built all this back up for 1 year. I think this is a program that moving forward, I know at the JV level last year they had a lot of success, which you can't really take a whole lot from that, but it's a group that's played together, and as they move back up, I think this is a program that is definitely trending in the right direction, and their numbers are great. I mean, amazing. Like we said, having to cancel the season a few years ago, now having, I believe, over 50 kids is just awesome. So a lot of credit to them, and I think it should be hopefully an exciting year. Like we said, they're going to be in a lot of competitive games for sure with the schedule, like we've talked about throughout the show today.
Yep. I call them those X Factor games, those kind of games that they decide whether you're getting in the playoffs or not. Last year, Riverdale fell just short of that. I think they're going to be in a lot of those games again this year because, again, it's a broken record, but this conference, this division of this conference is going to be playing a lot of back and forth, really competitive football. I think it's a lot of teams that are all right there next to each other. It's a ton of fun. So, all right, one more team to cover here in the Three Rivers. The Newman Comets, head coach Mike LeMay in his 4th season, now 20-11 overall. Last year, 2024, they were 8-3. They were 5-0 in the TRAC Rock division, so they were the conference champions on this side of the conference. Comets defeated Hope Academy 50-22 in the first round. They lost to Gibson City Melvin Sibley 28-0 in the second round in Class 1A. So kind of a disappointing way to go out there in a 28-0 shutout loss, but reason to be excited here with a lot of talent, a lot of familiar names back, 8 on offense, 5 on defense. Who catches your eye, Ty, to kind of start us off here on the offensive side of the ball?
That kid they got from the transfer portal, man, Rylan Alvarado from Morrison. We talked about this in our preview article on WRMJ.com, but I mean, he was a big part of Morrison. They were the 1A state champions in track and field as a team. And he was on a couple of different relay teams that won state titles for Morrison this past year. He's been a kid who's been an impact player since his freshman year. He's going to be a junior this year. Ran for over 400 yards, scored six touchdowns for Morrison last year. And really for Newman, I think coming into the year, their question mark was in the backfield because, I mean, pretty much like offensively, 8 starters. I think 3 running backs were their 3 starters they lost. So like you replace them with a kid who comes in for Morrison, who's a, established player that can come in. And I'm sure you can find some other kids around him to help him out in the backfield too. Evan Bushman, a 3-year starter at quarterback for them coming into his senior year, has had a couple of strong seasons for them. You kind of forget when Coach LeMay took over, he's went away from that traditional just run Newman where they'll spread it out sometimes. They still will go to that. But they'll go shotgun, 3 receivers, 4 receivers sometimes. So he's done a good job. Bushman has kind of, transitioning to this era of Newman football, I think. But this is a team that I'm really high on again this year. Offensively, they've got a lot of talent and athletes back. Defensively, they're really, really good every single year, always. So Newman, with kind of the addition there of Alvarado around a lot of returners who are already kind of strong players for this program, I think it's going to be, another typically successful year for the Comets in 2025.
Yeah, I think they'll see a lot of success this year. Rylan Alvarado, the name you mentioned. George Youngerman is back on the offensive side of the ball. Matt Blackert is a running back who's back as well. Renner Rosengren will be a wide receiver that Evan Bushman will be throwing to. I felt like last year you saw like they really had depth in the running back position. And I think with, injecting, with putting Rylan Alvarado right in the middle of it this year, I think that's going to be the same way. I think they're going to have a lot of depth there at the running back position once again to complement what Bushman's able to do as an experienced quarterback, as an all-honorable, all-mentioned, all-conference quarterback. So to go with those skill positions, they returned 4 impact players on the offensive line. So senior guard Jacob Payne was a first-team all-conference player, senior guard Ben Geske, junior center Matthew Murray, and senior tackle Cooper Spears. So some more all-conference talent there on the offensive line that complements a defense that's going to be pretty tough as well. As Coach described them, defensively, a bunch of guys returning that got a lot of experience last year that have some speed, and they're going to be a swarming defense. So Coach LeMay, former defensive coordinator, that's where they really find success. That's where they have really found success. You add the offense into it, they become a very dangerous team, as we saw last year, the last couple years. On the defensive side of the ball, George Youngerman, a linebacker, 66 tackles, 1 interception. John Rousey on defensive end, 21 tackles, 5 sacks. Jacob Payne, a name we mentioned already. He'll be doing work on the defensive side of the ball as well. Matthew Blackert, a name we mentioned, 44 tackles, 9 tackles for loss a year ago. So Jackson Graham, another defensive back, and then Rosengren, also a defensive back. So a lot of returners, in the trenches on offense and on defense. They're going to be tough. So I think just overall, this is, a talented football team that's ready to come back here.
Yeah, 100%. And, you mentioned the name I really like on defense for them is Blackard. He was only a sophomore last year. You mentioned 9 tackles for loss. He also, I believe, had the interception in overtime against Rock Ridge that clinched that game for them, 15-7 with Rock Ridge, I think, inside the 10-yard line, obviously, on their overtime possession to win that game, which basically launched them to winning the conference title. So they've got a couple of really key guys graduating on the defensive end, like Daniel Kelly was a kid who, tackled like 200 kids every year, it felt like. So there's, a big shoes to fill at the middle linebacker spot for them. But like I said, on the offensive end for them, there's enough pieces around, I think, to be able to, fill the hole that's there. And again, a team that it feels like it's just year in, year out, you say the same thing about Newman, but you expect them to be playing in the playoffs and playing deep into the playoffs like they do all the time. So I don't think that changes this year. They're a team, like I said, right off the top when we were talking about them. I'm expecting a lot out of them in 2025.
Yeah, I think one thing to kind of follow along with, kind of we always ask about kind of off the field stories to follow. he said multiple kids coming back from surgeries this year. So, Coach LeMay is excited to see those kids fully recovered and being a productive member of this team. So that's great, right? A lot of kids have dealt with some adversity, coming back, being a productive member of this team. That's really exciting. But overall, I think this is for good reason. They're the defending conference champions on that side. I think there's reason to be excited. They open the season hosting Princeton at Roscoe Eads Field in week 1. So, man, it's, we talked about it when we talked about Princeton. This is fireworks right out of the gate in the Three Rivers.
Absolutely. I mean, that might be the most highly anticipated game of the whole year in week 1, Newman versus Princeton. I mean, there's an argument to be made that those are the 2 best teams of the 12 in the league on each side, So, yeah, that's one for sure that is must see in week 1 from Roscoe Eads Stadium, right?
That's right. I love it. Great place to catch a football game, Newman or Sterling. Just really cool place. All right, so here we go. We've talked about them all, and this is a heck of a conference. I don't know where you start. I mean, Newman and Rock Ridge, and then there's every single other team that we've talked about, I think is fighting for a playoff spot. I legit do.
I do too. I think that Newman, Rock Ridge are the top of the league. I give the nod, to me at least, the preseason favorite is Newman Central Catholic, just with what they have back, and then the addition of Alvarado. I think Rock Ridge is right there with them, though. So that's a game when they play each other that, like last year, might end up deciding the conference championship. But I think, it's not out of the realm of possibility for, of the 6 teams on this side of the conference, for 5 of them to be playoff teams. I really think there's potential that could happen.
Yeah. Is it mathematically possible, I guess? But yeah, so
if they'll have to take care of business in like their crossover games, because you get 4 crossovers with the other side. And then, like I said, if like those middle 3 teams all play each other and go 2 and 3 against the rest of the league, if you're able to steal 3 wins out of the other 4, you could be looking at, those top 2, Rock Ridge and Newman in, and then 3 teams that might be 5 and 4 that all get in too. So from week to week, I think don't know who's going to win week in and week out, because everybody, it feels like, is so evenly matched. Like when you factor in both sides of the league, there's probably, 6, 7, 8 teams that are kind of like in that kind of same category, right?
Yeah. It's going to be a really exciting conference. I know people are maybe annoyed at hearing it, but if you're listening, you're a fan of this conference anyway, so you want to hear it. It's going to be a really exciting conference, and I think because there's a lot of really high-end football being played, there's a lot of talent spread across the board here, some really equal matchups week in and week out. So going to be exciting to follow along with. So Ty, you will be at home for week 1 for Mercer County, Monmouth, Roseville?
I will be there. Yes, sir.
Awesome. So what, you'll be on the call. Who's your sidekick? Do you have that planned out yet, or is that still work in progress?
Same as last year. My man, Monty Smith, who debuted with us last year as the color commentator for Mercer County Golden Eagle football. He did a great job. He'll be back with us in the booth.
He's really good. He does
a great job. Yep. So he's back. Yep. He's become a good friend of mine. My favorite part about him doing it is we get a ride all the way to wherever we're going. The road drives are a lot of fun, man. I love that stuff.
There you go. So you'll be following them. Will your dad be on the call for Rock Ridge week in and week out?
So we're trying to figure everything with that out, but we will have Rock Ridge, Sherrard, Orion covered this season as well, like we do every year. So it's 4 games a week. Traditionally, we're able to cover on the WRMJ airwaves, which is challenging to do at a station our size, but we are lucky to have a lot of talented people who help us out. So looking forward to covering, interscholastic athletics again. I think for the station since 1979, basically since day one, we've covered high school sports, which, way precedes my time. My dad, who you mentioned, Jim Taylor, John Hoshite, I mean, they both are legends in the business, I think, at least in radio specifically. So they've done a lot to allow the station to get to the point where it's at. So just hoping to continue their legacy, I guess, and at least add to it maybe a little, hopefully. So
Yeah, no, I love it. You guys are rocking and rolling out there and doing great work. 9 a.m. every Saturday morning. Listen to Sportsline on WRMJ. You can find it on WRMJ.com no matter where you live. It's my appointment viewing, I can tell you that. I will be in the car with my son or my kids, and I will have it turned on. We are listening every Saturday. And hey, here's hoping, fingers crossed, maybe Mitch Stormer, he can't make an appearance on the pod, but maybe he can make an appearance in the downtown studios in Aledo.
Yeah, hopefully he can. I tell you what, if we can get Mitch Stormer in the WRMJ studios in downtown Aledo, that would be like winning the lottery. If you guys come, I'll take you out to breakfast at some place in Aledo after the show too, maybe. So,
oh, that would see the sights. I would love it. He would love it. That would be excellent. So, Ty, thank you so much for joining us. Of course, you are our Three Rivers Athletic Conference insider this season for View from the West. You've already signed the contract. It's official. There's no getting out of it now. So
the first three people must have turned you down, man.
No. So I will be, as that conference insider, I'll be asking for you, politely asking, hey, if you want to join us for a weekly episode once in a while, if there's a big matchup, if you want to join us on Friday nights, the goal is the Instant Reacts podcast will be going live. We'll be going live every Friday night. So if you're around, you may have to join late depending on your road trips back from where you're getting, here or there and everywhere. But, the idea will be live, so that'll be a ton of fun. It's always shenanigans on the Instant Reacts, but that's the beauty of it.
I'm looking forward to that. Now, the only thing that I'm concerned about with you guys doing those shows live on Friday nights, I mean, how are you going to be able to keep Brian Stocking's potty mouth under control? I mean, don't you always have to edit late at night him like saying a bunch of bad words?
Truth be told, the Instant Reacts podcast was always the one that no edits involved. I just go, I stop. Well, in previous years, I hit stop and just send it on out there. Whatever we said, we said. So that's why I think the live format will work just fine. We can try to, there's no really controlling Stocking. You just hope to contain it, right? So we'll see what we can do. But
hopefully he's got a lot of Riverdale Ram excitement on Friday nights this year.
That would be fun. He's energetic regardless. So either way, so the Riverdale would just be the topping of all of it. So, all right. Well, Ty, thanks a lot. Hopefully if I guess if you're playing for a softball championship of the world, good luck in that. If you're not, I hope to see you in downtown Moline at the other bar for the View from the West kickoff party. Either way, you'll have a great weekend, I'm sure.
Thank you for listening. One or the other.
There you go. Yes, exactly. Thank you to everyone for listening. Thank you to everyone for following along. Next week, we'll be coming back with the Big Northern Conference preview. We'll see you then. We'll talk to you then. That'll do it for this week's episode of View from the West. Thank you so much to everyone who listens. Make sure to follow along on Instagram and X, and also subscribe to our YouTube channel for the latest content, game highlights, and more. Thanks so much. We'll see you next week.